PlayerUnknown's Battleground is one of the sleeper hits of 2017 so far, coming out of nowhere and hitting the ground running, not only setting the shooter community ablaze, but pulling others, like myself, into the crossfire with it. The first thing I heard about Battlegrounds was something along the lines of, "It's great, but it's also a buggy mess, so bear with it." I know I wasn't the only one to receive this warning, and certainly I've passed it on to others myself, but sticking it out has led to some of the most unique experiences I've ever had. My first few attempts to play it were met with instant black screens that booted me to the desktop, as well as just not connecting to servers for whatever reason. Despite these issues though, at its very core, the game is incredibly fun for a myriad of reasons. That kind of speaks to where gaming is and where it's heading in the future. Not many games can get away with this kind of build quality. Even if it is just early access, I feel like we've come to expect a certain level of quality as consumers, especially when early access just boils down to beta testing behind a sometimes pretty steep paywall a lot of the time. If we're to pay for this beta version of the game, then it should be at least somewhat put together, right? As there's always going to be exceptions to this rule both ways, some early access games are extremely tightly constructed pieces of the medium that just need a little extra push to get to release, while others are so unabashedly made to scam consumers for a quick dollar, it's kind of upsetting to see. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds sits right in the middle of this scale, and unlike other failed survival battle royale type shooters of the past few years, developer PlayerUnknown seems to be very involved with the community, at least for now. But what is it about this game that lets people give it concessions despite its current barely held together state? Well, it's the simple pick up and play premise that feels hard to master due to the nature of playing online and the RNG factor of weapon spawns. No death feels bad, and seeing as it's an instant kickback to the title screen, there's no time lost in getting back into the action, keeping that addiction cycle of one more game going. There's a sense of tension that comes unmatched with every round. Every encounter is a different story that you can swap with your friends later on about how you survived being holed up in a house for what feels like an eternity, waiting for the perfect moment to take your shot on anyone unlucky enough to come by. It's the stress of the ominous blue barrier ever pushing you forward, forcing progression whether you want to leave your safe hideout or not. It's having everyone start on the even playing field of an empty inventory, scrambling to build an arsenal as quickly as possible before getting caught out. It's the state of panic when you've jumped out of the plane and realized you're not alone, and you have to decide to fight or drift off elsewhere knowing that other players are aware of your presence. If you want a complete breakdown of exactly why PlayerUnknown's gameplay works well, I recommend watching fellow YouTuber Hamish Black's video on the subject. With the rise of the indie developer, we have seen this push of prioritizing certain aspects of games over others, be it storytelling, mechanics, aesthetics, or in the case of Battlegrounds, gameplay. Budgeting for all parts of a game to be top-notch is not something many small development teams can afford to do, outside of sourcing money from crowdfunding services, but even then, that can lead to other complications. So showcasing the strengths of the team or the solo developer is a priority that quite often needs to happen. With early access, we can be shown this potential with a giant asterisk applied to other elements, saying these may or may not get better, but please have faith in what we're confident in. Like I said, this isn't always the case with a lot of games, and I do think we should hold some of the pay-to-play the beta games to a degree of standard, but where we focus the grading is what's important moving forward. It's easy to write off all early access games under the same umbrella. Hell, I'm guilty of it. It's all too easy to look at Steam tags and see the same things over and over again, thinking, will this game even be looked after for longer than a couple of months once the hype of the release has died down? Even when I saw the rise of Battlegrounds, I was extremely hesitant, and if it wasn't for some generous friends, I never would have gotten a chance to play it, shifting my entire perspective. This idea of a game being more than the sum of its parts isn't exactly new. It's the same reason people hold games like Dark Souls in such high regard. Despite its incredibly flawed PC port, or even the console versions running suboptimally, the fanbase will argue the game is near perfect. And that's a perfectly valid argument. Dark Souls did a lot in terms of pushing gameplay forward that it's easy to look past the flaws of its performance. The same goes with beloved games like Oblivion, The Simpsons Hit and Run, or even other early access indie hit Golf with Your Friends. Where Golf with Your Friends succeeds is making a fun and accessible game of putt-putt to play with, well, your friends. Being able to share experiences either live with friends in a call or through social media can greatly enhance a game's overall appeal and drive to come back for more, and can make others want to join in just so they're part of the conversation that's happening. Fear of missing out is a very powerful tool in game development, and if you can create something with easily shareable moments, on purpose through awesome mechanics or by accident with funny glitches, just embracing those zany moments your game can have goes a very long way with the reachability of new audiences. There's also a lot to be said about the way Battlegrounds handles victories, not with a flash of lights or numbers screaming across the screen, just a simple fade into a line of winner winner chicken dinner, and no other fanfare whatsoever. Despite that though, I find myself fighting and surviving for that non-existent chicken dinner just to brag about it on Twitter. seeing things like this happen is stupid and shows how unfinished a game is, but it's also fun and makes you think, I want to do something stupid like that and share it with people too. This mentality can go both ways and end up being a detriment to a game overall, but if the core fun is there, the stupid fun of bugs will draw people in, while the actual fun to be found deep within the barely held together game will keep them around. Whether all these factors were intentional or Playerunknown is just cleverly taking advantage of the viral potential of his game, I don't exactly know, but it's a great lesson in embracing the quirks of early access and proving its place in the industry. A game that relies so heavily on its funny gimmicks such as I Am Bread was an overnight sensation, and that virality was able to carry it out of early access. But after that, the game kind of died off, which is fine for a game such as this, which will use the reactions of Let's Players to sell itself. But if a game is to have more staying power, it needs a little bit more substance than that one-off trick that won't last out of early access. I don't know if Playerunknown's Battlegrounds will ever reach full release. I really hope it does, and that it keeps building momentum as it makes the journey there. Regardless of that fact, as it stands right now, it is one of the most fun, shareable, and downright crazy experiences currently on the market that really proves the value that can be gained with early access.